welcome back to the Corporate Burnouts podcast. How you doing, Mandy?
I'm doing so good. I am excited because we are doing kind of a part two to last week's talk about personality tests and assessments. And we have an amazing guest here, Miss Amy Nunn. And I'm going to read her bio because I don't want to leave a single thing out. So, Amy Nunn is a leadership mentor, culture strategist, and author with more than 2 decades of experience helping leaders cut through the noise and build high performing, values driven teams. She's the founder of Next to None, where she works with business owners, executives, and leadership teams to tackle accountability challenges, strengthen communication, and create a culture people actually want to be part of. Amy is known for being direct, relatable, and focused on practical strategies with no empty theory or corporate jargon. She's also the author of Dirty Lenses and Inspire and Lead, and host of the Next to None podcast, where she highlights real stories of leadership growth and entrepreneurial success. Please help us welcome Amy Nunn to the podcast.
Hi,
Thank you.
welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to do this today.
Yes, it's so fun. And this is just I'm so glad that we kind of put all of this together because we love talking about the personality assessments and we love that you are an expert at them. And we love that you're a certified practitioner of the DISC assessment because we read through it and we understand it to a point, but not we don't know how to put it into practice as much as you do. So we would just absolutely love to have you go through those with us and help us.
Sure. I'll do a brief overview of like the DISC in general.
Please.
I do free trainings for businesses. I just like a 1-hour training, teach them how to recognize different personalities with nonverbal, verbal communication, how to approach people that are different than you are, how to communicate more effectively to the different types of personalities. A lot of times I share stories about my husband and I, where I'm an ID personality, he's a C, and so we couldn't be further on the spectrum of differences in personalities. So we process information differently. So the D in the DISC profile is actually assertive. They like to challenge. They're results oriented. They're high achievers, and so they're very, very driven. And then your I personality, which I believe Mandy Holt, you're an I, right?
That's me, 99.
Me too. So the I personality, they love people. They're great with brainstorming. They like to be collaborative. They bring people alongside of them, and they're not as driven as the D personality, but they still want to achieve things, but they just kind of focus more on people and in support and the collaboration side of things, whereas the D personality tends to just want to do it alone and just drive results.
Dominate, yeah.
Yeah. And then you have the S personality, which is Mandy, which that wasn't surprising to me knowing Mandy. The S personality, they are, I think every organization needs S personalities in it because they're just like that laid back. They're smart. They will ask questions. They will ask great questions. They're steady. So you're not going to see emotional highs and emotional lows with them. Whereas like your D personalities, they can get very passionate about what they're doing. And the I personality can get very passionate about people, but they can also get really bummed out when they're not really celebrated or valued for those things. And the S personality is just right here, and they're just keeping everybody steady. And they're really great support for, they're great listeners. They like to listen to people. They like to make sure that the people feel valued and they're heard. And then the C personality, my husband is a C personality, so they are very detail-oriented. They are more facts and logic. They are analyzers. You see a lot of accounting jobs, like the numbers. They like the numbers, they like the data, and they're going to live in that all day long.
Yep, that all makes sense.
It really, really does. And it's funny because when, you said that you are an ID, so I guess that says like you're the most dominant I and then secondary D.
Yeah, so the product that I use is Everything Disc with the Wiley Group. Okay, and they have their sphere, right? And there's 4 quadrants. There's actually 12. The way that they do it, there's 12 personalities in it. So that you've got your primary, which is the primary ones that everybody normally knows about, the D, the I, the S, C, but they actually have 4 3 in each of the quadrants. So I'm literally on the line between the I and the D, like literally on the line. So I get the best of both worlds, and I get the worst of both worlds.
I gotcha. So basically, you're saying I'm an I. I'm very, very much an I. I'm not on the line. Definitely, when I look at these results, like there's no question. Mandy,
Yeah.
it looks like you are exactly half and half with the S and the C. So you're probably
Yeah.
SC
Yes.
the way that she's an ID.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yes. So, what I am interested in beyond the kind of high level of this
Hmm.
is because there's both the natural and the adaptive. And
Yep.
I would love an explanation on those differences because me and Mandy are both in the S. I think
Hmm.
our adaptive is like half of
Mhm.
the natural. So, can you explain that?
Sure. It's your adaptive is your emotional intelligence kicking in, right? Depending on the environment you're in, the individual you're with, those sort of things, your emotional intelligence adjusts to the people that you are around, really. And it should, because like for me,
Yep.
when I was in working in a business that I not like that was not my own, we had a very high D culture. And so I had to really shift and utilize my emotional intelligence to make sure that I pulled that S in, so that because eyes, when they're driven, they can just be leaving dead bodies in their wakes, right? But as I adapted, my S increased so that I could balance that.
Okay. All right. So for us to be at then basically half the score, if you will, um, in the S, what does that
Was that
show
meaning?
to you? Yeah.
It means that, so S's they are typically pretty laid back, and what it shows is that you're adjusting yourself to, like, you own your own business, Mandy, right? And
Hmm.
Mandy, other Mandy,
Hmm.
Yeah,
you are
Mandy too.
you
Hmm.
you are also doing similar things, right? So what happens is if you stayed in that S phase and that C phase, what would happen is that you wouldn't get as many things done or making decisions because your S is so high. But
Hmm.
as you adapt to that, your emotional intelligence says, "Hey, I'm going to have to do this. I have to shift to this because I need to be doing this stuff."
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, as I'm looking at some of the tendencies, a higher S prefers more controlled, deliberative, and predictable environment. But under stress, when you're adapting, we both have the ability, obviously, by this to say, whoa, I need to step back a little bit. I need to be a little more flexible, a little more
Hmm.
dynamic, and be comfortable in a little less structured of a work environment.
Right.
And that resonates deeply.
Hmm. No, and that's a good thing. I'm
Yeah.
happy about that. That's
Yeah.
very good because if not, then it would all just be a high
What
S
would
at
it
all times.
Yeah, what would it say about one's personality if, like, for instance, I am a 99 and my adaptive score is a 95? Like, basically, I don't have the ability to not care about people, is what that tells
Right.
me. Is there a combination or a situation in which not having a range on that adaptability side could be a problem?
Eyes tend to, depending upon their how they answered their questions, right?
Mhm.
Eyes are typically not great at follow up. And so they have to adapt and work hard on those things and set up systems in place for themselves so that they do. Or, like, for instance, what I did is I hired an assistant who was really great. She was an S. She was great at follow up. She was kept me on track, and that was really great for me. But as you grow and understand, so here's the thing: the disc is for understanding yourself and understanding others. When you understand those areas, and I don't like to say weaknesses, I say challenges, where you're
Yeah.
challenged, like,
Mhm.
it's an opportunity for growth. I've had people before say, well, I'm a D, so I'm just going to be a jerk and people are just have to get over it. And I'm like, no,
Yes.
that's not how that works. What that says is that you are like, because I used to do that. I was that leader that would just come through and be like, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. And I just like kept moving forward. And I look back and there's nobody behind me.
Yeah.
And you can't lead that. We can't lead people that way.
We talked about that in our last episode about that you can't use your assessment and who you are in that assessment as a crutch.
Yes.
You have to adapt. You have
Yeah,
to
it
figure
shines a
out how
light.
to do it. Yeah. And I think that this is a perfect transition into what we're talking about today, because first and foremost you need to use this assessment for what it's for. And
Mhm.
it works really well that Mandy is that high I, and that she isn't the very best at following up, but I'm really good at
But
that.
you're
So
good at it, and you keep me on
I
track for
remind
sure.
her. But let's say that she was going to own her own business, then she would need to make sure that the person she was hiring to help her
Yes.
was that, just like you said, hiring your assistant. You need to make sure
Mhm.
that they have all the qualities that, not that you don't, that just aren't as natural to you,
Right.
Yeah.
because you
Right.
can work on those things, but you need to have people around you, and you need to build a team out that
Yes.
will complement everywhere
Yes,
that you
exactly.
can't.
I
So
want
I
to
love
say
that.
this. A lot of people, I've seen this in the past, like, well, I'm a D, so this is just who I am. And it is these personality tests and these assessments and all this stuff are not meant to put you in a box. It's meant to help you understand yourself better so learn how to communicate more effectively with other people. And then
Mhm.
you adapt in your emotional intelligence so that you're a better leader in the
Mhm.
long run.
Mhm.
Yes. And team member and
Mhm.
Yeah.
whoever. So, yes, I love that so much. So, we are so happy that you could kind of break this down with us, but we want to dig into, now you have these assessments done on your team,
Mhm.
and this is going to make feedback and communication so much easier, right?
Yeah,
So, let's dig into feedback, because
sure.
I know that I have said on this podcast that I love feedback, but I don't like unsolicited feedback, and I don't like feedback from people that I don't trust. And I don't, there's
Sure.
so many parts of feedback that can be very, very uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
if you are in a safe space, first and foremost, and if you are bringing feedback or receiving feedback in a way that someone has really thought it through, these things can be so good,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah.
I am kind of like you. Don't love especially when feedback is a criticism, when it
Mhm.
feels like more of an attack on who I am,
Yeah.
my tendency is immediately defensive. Like, why would you say that to me? So the delivery is very important to me, and the heart behind why you're saying what you're saying
Yes.
to me is very important and determines what my natural instinct is to receive it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to like, how do you tie in what you know about yourself, like all these things we just learned about ourselves in the disc assessment, to being better at receiving feedback, being more open to it, and then also being maybe a little kinder and more strategic about how you give it? How do those two things play into each other?
So I always say feedback starts with curiosity.
Hmm.
Understand the why behind whatever it is that happened, whether it's conflict, whether it's a missed expectation. Be curious. So, like, if you're a D personality, you're very direct, right? So, not everyone responds well to directness, right?
Hmm.
So, ask questions. Hey, so this such and such happened. Hey, can you help me understand what happened there? Maybe I'm missing something that I'm just not seeing.
Hmm.
Like, that's a curious question to ask, right? Versus going in and say, "Hey, you screwed this up. What are you going to do about it?" Because I've had leaders say that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and
you
it's a
know?
lot more comfortable as a leader to go in that way, as
Hmm.
the, like, let's just talk about this, and let's try and get there in not a soft way, but in a
Right.
seeking to understand way,
And
as opposed
productive.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah. It also affects your culture in your business. And so, like, like, I go into things now. I didn't used to. When I had a problem with one of my staff or one of somebody else on my team, down below my team leads, I would just go to them and be like, "Hey, why'd you do that?" And that's very, like, off-putting for people because it feels kind of like you're attacking them, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It feels like an
And so
attack.
I had to get
Mhm.
really good at asking questions, the right questions, also at the right time. right? Like if you're in a what I call a water cooler moment where you guys are being personal and you're talking about life or whatever, that is not the time to give somebody feedback. The other thing is I often would ask permission. Hey, can I share something with you that I noticed?
That is a huge,
Yeah.
Mandy, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna say the word. It's a game changer.
It's a game changer.
It's a
So
game changer.
it is, and the reason that it is because you are asking for permission, but you're also the person has the opportunity, and I have in the past been like, I cannot handle feedback right now, right?
Yeah.
That is, I hope that a leader would be like, okay, not right now. That's fine. We'll take
Yep.
care of this later. But it's like sometimes you just are not in the, like, you just got yelled at on the phone by somebody, or you just had something weird happen at home. And
Yeah.
no, I'm not in the headspace for this. Please, let's not do this, because it's going to lead to a conversation that neither of us are going to like.
Always did this. I would ask permission. And if they said no, I said, okay, well, you let me know when a good time is. But I also was conscious of the fact that most people don't want that because it's conflict, right?
Yeah.
That is conflict. And a lot of people, I would say 80% of the people in businesses don't want conflict. So and that's what causes a lot of problems in business, because
It's
that
the
is a lack
avoidance
of
of it.
communication. 100%. And so, when you're able to ask permission and then make sure that you follow up. And if it's something that they don't follow up with you, hey, you reach out to them like, hey, I would love to have a conversation with you. Can we go to lunch on such and such date? Right? So that way you're making it more neutral environment. It's not in your office, or if you go to coffee, whatever the case may be, you're making it more of a safe place. Because if you go to a restaurant, nothing's going to escalate, right? On either end. Well, it shouldn't, hopefully.
I was gonna say, hope not.
Yeah, who knows?
And so those are some things. And one of the things that I kind of wrote out, I wrote up some notes and I just wanted to share this. So leaders who give positive feedback and critical feedback do the 3-1 ratio. Are you guys familiar with the 3-1 ratio?
Is this like a compliment sandwich kind of situation?
Kind of, yeah. You give, 3 pieces of positive feedback, and then the constructive feedback that you give back, it needs to be constructive, not critical, right? There's a difference.
Yeah.
Constructives can say like, so okay, one time my assistant, right, she missed some deadlines, but I wasn't really sure why, and she was kind of an S personality, so conflict was very like, "Ugh, I don't want to do this."
Yeah.
And so in our we did a weekly one-to-one, just a quick 15-30 minute thing. And I said, hey, so we missed this deadline, not a big deal, but I was just hoping you could help me understand how we got there. And she immediately went into like, well, I'm like, oh, hey, you're not in trouble. Like, I'm just trying to understand. I'm just seeking to understand.
Yeah,
If you
what
can
got
just
in
help
your
me with
way?
that.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's really about, and before I did that, by the way, I was like, listen, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate how you keep my calendar on track. You remind me of the reports that I need to get in, and you really are a great buffer between the team and myself. And I'm just very thankful for that, because otherwise I'd be bombarded all the time, and she's like, oh, thanks, and then you go into hey, help me understand this, because the praise or the compliments and the front end, what does that do for a person?
It builds you up. Like,
But it also gives you a confidence, like, I'm
mhm.
doing an awesome job, and now you're
I
coming
know,
at me with, yeah.
yeah, I know that you're not telling me that I suck,
Mhm.
but I have an opportunity and that's okay.
Exactly. Exactly. So, like, the reason most people don't like getting feedback is because typically it's not given in a way that they can understand it either. So knowing that she was an S personality was super important for me to give that compliment and make her know that she was valued by me. Now, when I had a D personality team member, it was not a fluff thing. They don't want the fluff. They don't want me to go through all the things. They would come into my office. And I said, good morning. How are you today? Doing great. What's up? And I'm like, well, listen, I saw that you missed a deadline in getting this report in, and I just wanted to follow up with you about that. So I wasn't mean. I wasn't rude. I was just direct.
Yes.
Right? Because that's what speaks to them. They don't want to have a lot of the fluff. If you get there on a Monday morning and you walk up to somebody that's a deep personality and you're like, hey, how was your morning? You know, like I love being like that. But with that style of personality, I can't. And so giving them feedback needs to be direct and to the point.
Yeah, because with some personalities, it's like, get through the bullshit. Why are we talking
Exactly.
about this? You're using too many words. I had several bosses that it's like, you had to get to the point. There's no excuses, no extra words. Just tell me what you want to tell me. We'll figure it out and move on.
I
It
need all the
is,
words.
yes.
I
And that's
need a billion words
yeah.
to go along with this one little sentence that you have for me.
Something that you mentioned about the compliments and the other things, but when people say feedback, a lot of times they think of bad feedback, right? Because that's how I think of, but there's so much good feedback that can be given. And I think that a very good thing as a leader is to give a lot of positive feedback without giving any negative feedback at times. So that you're not, because if some bosses that I had, if they had sat me down and they started with the compliment sandwich, I'd be like, what did I do? Because it was only ever given with negative feedback in it or judgments or whatever I perceived it to be in the moment. And I think that everyone needs to work on more good feedback as a leader as
You
well,
know,
myself included.
there's a few things that I was really intentional about with my teams. So the last team that I led, it was 250 people, and I created leadership structures for all of these people. And what I did is I would take my team leaders out to lunch for nothing other, just to let them know that they were appreciated. Or I would send them a thank you card that just told them how much I appreciated them, why I appreciated them, this, that, and the other. Did I love doing those things? No. But you know what?
Yeah,
They were
it's work.
Yeah.
it's work, but it was so effective, and like they didn't need me because I was developing them. And that to me is what the game changer is in feedback. If you're investing your time into your team members and they feel valued, they feel heard and supported, just because someone feels heard does not mean that you have to do what they are frustrated or talking to you about. It just means that you listened and then you took it into advisement, right? Like, thank you so much for sharing them at that. I will process a little bit on that and then I'll get back to you, right? And sometimes I will go back to that team member and say, hey, listen, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. I think it's so important that we do share this stuff with one another. I don't see how we can implement this into this process right now, but you know what? We'll revisit it in 6 months and see if something has changed. And then I'd have my assistant in 6 months remind me to go revisit this,
Yeah,
right?
so that
It
you can
has to
follow
be.
up and follow through on what you said because you are a high I, and that's not a natural occurrence.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes
But
sense.
the piece of it that's so important in what I just said is that when you're developing your team members, feedback and conflict is not difficult because they know they're valued and you're investing in them, right?
Yep.
And the
If done
communication
right.
shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. If done correctly, absolutely, those things are happening. But I think that there are people who quit jobs every single day because the feedback is given to them. First of all, feedback by somebody who is prejudiced in some way or biased in some way, where it's
Yeah.
not even excellent feedback in general. It's an opinion or a preference of something that doesn't matter. I think that that's hard, but just bosses in general who cannot figure out how to coach their team in a good communication style, they lose
Right.
people. They're going to. So it's like freaking work on this as a leader because it's so important.
But I
Yeah.
also think that there's a lot of companies who lose people because there are leaders that are so afraid of giving feedback. Like, I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
want to upset you or hurt your feelings, and I don't know how to do this in a way that's not going to, cause a problem and make me lose you to the point that feedback is withheld, growth is not given,
Yep.
and then I'm leaving because there's a disconnect. And
So
I
what's the
think that a
challenge in
lack
that?
of feedback is a huge
Why
thing.
do you think that they think that way?
The leader or the employee?
The leader, the one that's afraid to give feedback because they don't want to lose people.
You're the expert, ma'am. Tell me.
It's because their leader is giving them feedback in a way that is not conducive to their growth.
Yeah.
So
9
you're
times
saying
out of 10.
shit rolls downhill.
A lot of times, yeah.
Yeah,
But
it
you
totally
can
makes sense. If I'm being given feedback in a way that's hard for me to process, understand, and, put into action, change,
Mhm.
then it's going to be hard for me to then take that, process how I'm giving feedback and do that in a way that's going to get a better result. Like, I would
Yes.
imagine it takes a major mindset shift to go from getting feedback incorrectly to giving it correctly and positively, expecting a positive outcome.
Yeah.
Yes. I was always a huge fan of, because I had a leader that was terrible at this. I remember one time they gave me feedback and they're like, what are you going to do to change that? And I'm like, I don't know. You just told me that you think I am this way, but nobody else sees me that way. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
confused. Can you give me instances? They couldn't give me instances, right? So like a lot of times what I do is like someone else's feedback doesn't necessarily mean that they're correct. It could be their
Yeah.
preferences. It could be their opinion. It could be a lot of different things. Doesn't mean that that person is bad. It's just how they delivered it probably wasn't. But what I do with stuff like that, I say, okay, is there truth in this? Is there truth in what they said? Okay, maybe 50% truth in that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me look at that 50%. What can I do differently in that 50%? And make that change. And as you have your leader and then you have your next leader down, right? That's a leader leading a leader, right? And they're afraid to do the feedback to their teams because of how this is what I say, don't be a victim, be a victor, because you can exact change. You can help with culture shift. If you start doing it the right way, you don't have to do it how your leader does it, because everybody's different. Everybody's personality is different. We're all unique because of the experiences that we've had in life, how, the jobs that we've had or the leaders that we've had, or, I've had some really amazing leaders and I've had some really crappy leaders, right? But I refused. I just looked at all of it and said, what can I learn from every single one of these things?
Yeah. I also think, you said 9 out of 10 times the, middle manager who's your leader is being led and given feedback in a way that they can't process. I think that the other maybe 1 out of 10 times you just have a leader who is not meant to be a leader,
100%.
right? But that
Yep.
is so hard because because now you're in the place to give feedback to your boss's boss, and that feels like shit. And also it's like, why are we listening to her, right? Because they obviously put this leader in place for a reason. That's hard. Like, this person is not capable of giving feedback, so
Yep.
they can't grow a team. They can't.
Mandy, I love that you brought that up, because I had a leader that was terrible. He was terrible. It felt like he was almost a little insecure because of how I led people, because he was not like a people, right? And I
Yeah.
remember
He was probably
I
very
had to,
jealous of your ability to connect.
yes. I had to learn how to lead up with him in a way that wasn't like, hey, I'm leading up with you. And what I mean by that is I would ask him questions. So he'd say, why did you take so and so to lunch? They're not a leader in our organization. They're not a da da da. I was like, okay. I said, well, I totally understand where you're coming from on that. But tell me, if you have a potential person that could have the potential to be a phenomenal leader in this organization, would you invest in them, or would you just kind of let them keep doing it at their own pace? And they were like, yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. They didn't praise that, but by asking questions to your leaders helps you lead up.
No, it's smart because almost nobody above you in ranking wants to get feedback from you. But asking questions does make sense, because how can you, as a leader, I mean, I'm sure a lot of leaders would say don't invest in people, like, let's just make money. But how can they argue with that? I see value in this person. I want to cultivate that relationship and see how we can grow
Yeah, how
them.
I can help them to grow. But I think even bigger than that, it's when you are able to ask a question and allow that person, especially in a leadership, to come up with their own answer, and their own answer validates your own reasoning. then they're still in the driver's seat, right? Because they came to that conclusion. You gave them the opportunity to come up with on their own that you were in the right.
So when I did my certification as a leadership coach, this is one of the huge, this was probably my biggest takeaway. If I give you the answer, you are likely to only 20% of it, maybe 20% of the time you'll do it.
Yeah.
But if I ask you a series of questions that evokes an awareness in you, that you come up with this like aha moment, you're 70% more likely to follow through and actually do it.
Yeah, because I made it, I allowed you to make this important to you, not just telling you it's important to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that they always say, like, figure out how to make it their idea, and you just helped them get
That's the
there.
power of influence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think feedback goes into that. Like there's a lot of times I didn't just come out and say like, hey, this happened and da 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 da. I would ask the question. So, hey, can you walk me through what happened with that? Because what it does is it makes them feel heard. And it puts them on not on the defense, right? Because I'm seeking to understand what happened versus you were wrong, you did this, whatever the case was, right? And by asking questions, you position yourself in a way that allows that person to feel safe and that they can speak about whatever it was. And they may still have done some things wrong. And what I would usually do is like, wow, okay, I didn't realize that this, and this happened. That makes a lot more sense. So what would you do differently next time?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you also could have not had all the information. I think that a lot of leaders come in guns a-blazing, and
And
it's
they
like,
don't know everything yet.
no, you don't have all the information. So if you come in asking questions, now you get the missing information, and maybe there's no reason to even have an altercation at all.
Right. Right.
So I love this.
I like this framework. I just want to share this with you.
Mhm.
So framework that you can use in giving feedback well. Observation, impact, and expectation. So I just wrote down a little example, right?
Okay.
Hey, in the meeting, I noticed you interrupted Sarah. It caused the team to pull back a little bit in our brainstorming session. Let's work on creating more spaces for everyone to speak.
Okay.
So what I did is I addressed what the problem was. So now if I shift that and I say, hey, maybe I missed something. Were you catching what Sarah was saying? Whatever
Yeah.
they're.
And then they have to acknowledge that they cut Sarah off, so they have no idea what Sarah was talking about.
Well, and they may not have realized, because sometimes in
Right.
excitement, people just start talking because they want to get their point across, right? But if you start creating a space where everybody has that space to speak into something, it does not mean that everything's going to go the way that they want. It just gives them that opportunity and they feel heard.
Absolutely. All right, I want to shift into receiving feedback,
Yes.
because we've talked about it a little bit in this conversation, but giving feedback is half of it, but receiving feedback, I think, happens to more of us more often than we give feedback, right?
Yeah.
So give us your best tips on receiving feedback.
So a lot of times if I got feedback and it wasn't great, I would just say, hey, I would like some time to process through what you talked about. I like to process internally, but then I have safe people that I process externally. I'm mostly an external processor, right?
Is that a high I thing?
Yes.
Because it's like I can't think on my own. I have to think out loud, and I need somebody else to be listening to that. And then somewhere in there, I'll decide how I feel.
I actually found a mentor early on in my career that I could call and just say, hey, I got this feedback from this person. And oftentimes the feedback is a blind spot for us. We don't realize that we're doing something or that we have a habit of something. And so sometimes we just don't see it, right? And bringing a trusted person in that is for you, they're championing you, they're all you, they are all for you, right? They're all for you, Mandy. They're all for you. And when you bring to them this information that your leader gave you, and you say, hey, they said this, and this, and I'm not really seeing that. What am I missing?
Yeah.
And sometimes it would be like, you're not missing anything. I think they're wrong. This particular person has been in my life for over 15 years, and they know me probably as well as my husband, of being my husband for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they know me so well. And so what I will go back with, I wrote down some questions. And this is also great when you are receiving feedback. Can you
Mhm.
give me a specific example? Especially if it's something that you're kind of like, what? Can you
Mhm.
give me a specific example? This is another one that I really like to use, and I would teach my team to use this as well. What's one thing I could do differently next time?
Yeah.
I will ask my leader that question. I don't ask my team that question, right? Because what that does is it in my mind, I'm asking them for direct information. It's not that they're just giving it to me, I'm asking for it.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing with feedback is think of it as a growth tool, not an attack.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And there's some leaders that are just not great at giving feedback. I had one for many years.
Yeah, because that approach is so important. If you come at me hot, I'm going to shut down and I'm not even going to be able to think about what you said. I'm
Right.
going to get immediately defensive because I didn't know there was anything wrong before 5 seconds ago, and I'm not going to be able to handle that.
Right.
Luckily, I haven't had leaders in that way, but I have had peers, and like people in life that are like that, and I don't operate well when it comes to that. But if you come at me with
Yeah.
love and a little bit more gentle and a little bit more conversation, that cut and dried direct feedback, that feels a little more like a dagger. It may not be as
Yeah.
much as like, the attack mode, but if you just come in and you're like, "Hey, you screwed up. I need you to fix it. Move on." I'm like, "Okay, now I just suck. I don't know how
Yeah.
to
You
fix
know,
it."
part of it's because they had a lot of times what I saw, especially with leaders that did that,
Mhm.
they did not set clear expectations.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I had this happen. I went into a meeting, wasn't a meeting for feedback, but all of a sudden it became a meeting for feedback. And the things that he said were hurtful. We were going through some personal things in my family, and I had shared some of those things with them, and they
Ooh, don't use it.
used that.
Don't
Mhm.
use it.
Mhm.
So, but I was angry, so I
Mhm.
said, "You know what? I would love some time to process this, and I'd like to get back with you."
Mhm.
So the next morning, I texted them and said, "Hey, do you have 5 quick minutes? I'd like to follow up from our meeting yesterday." And I walked in and I said, "First, I want to tell you that I appreciate you giving me this feedback." I said, "But I'm sure this wasn't your intention. But when you said X, Y, and Z, it made me feel this way."
Mhm.
Because people can't argue with how you feel, but you also have to make sure that you're not just up in your feelings.
Right.
Mhm.
And I told them what they said and how hurtful it was to me because it was my family. And that's that. And I will be a mama bear and I will come at you swinging if you come at
Yeah.
my family. So, having that time to process and calm my emotions down. This is again emotional intelligence. Being able to take a step back, process through what they said. Okay, this is truth. This is crap. That's kind of like how I process. This was truth, but this was crap. And then asking for that follow up the next day, not letting it linger till the following week, just that quick 5 minutes. And it really was quick 5 minutes. Just said, "Hey, I'm sure this wasn't your intention." Because if you don't approach it that way, that person's going to be on the
They're
defense.
just defensive, yeah.
Mhm. Right. I think that this probably got a little bit out of hand, um and in a normal circumstance you wouldn't have said that, so I'm not going to take it that way, but here's what happened. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Something that I find really important about receiving feedback is, yes, to process it, yes, to figure out what could have been different, but like take accountability for, because some things, right, you're going to
Yeah.
get defensive because you're
Yep.
like, I get defensive a lot of times about my intentions. All right, this is just in every kind of feedback in life. It's like, I can't believe that I just hurt this person's feelings because of something that happened.
Yeah.
That was not my intention, right? And I
Mhm.
want people to understand what my intention was. That's pretty much the only time that I'll get truly defensive with feedback. But I feel that it's very important as an employee, as a boss giving feedback. It's like, take accountability. We had a situation where we had a social media post go to all like 96 of our accounts that we run. And it was like you know, like, oh my gosh, this is so bad right now.
It was freak
And
out.
immediately it was, okay, you get on this, I'm gonna get on this. I am so freaking sorry. I don't even know how this happened. Like, immediate accountability, right? And I remember it took us like 20 minutes to get it deleted off of everybody's account that it wasn't supposed to go on. These things happen in corporate. Oh my gosh, Mandy, you remember that
I mean,
happened
I
so
did it.
much.
I did it.
Yeah.
And then you get
Yeah.
blown
And
up
it
with
goes
text
to,
messages. And I'm like, I'm the one that screwed up. Give me 5 minutes to fix it.
yeah. But imagine if that person who made that mistake had been like, it's not that big of a deal. We'll figure it out, blah, blah, blah. Like, my blood would have boiled because,
Yeah. Because it is
no,
that big of a deal.
right. And the thing is that at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
Like, this was a run of the mill post. It was not for all of these other businesses. It was just for one. Our clients were super freaking cool about it, but it was this is a process and it's going to take a little while to get to because you can post all at the same time. You can't delete it at the same time. You have to go in
Yeah.
individually.
Individually.
And I remember using it as an example with somebody and saying, do you see the difference, like, in how I was not mad at all? I was not mad at her at all. It was like, this is a challenge that we are going to conquer right now. We're going to get the whole team on it. Everyone's going to delete the things that they need to. But if she had been defensive about it, if she had tried to make excuses about it because she was experiencing shame in the moment, it makes us defensive in general. Shame does. And if she would have handled it differently, I would have had a whole different reaction, right? Because again, there's no marketing emergencies. Everything was going to be okay. We could have had a couple clients be like, that's kind of unprofessional. Why'd you do that? You know, like
Yeah.
accidents, right? But it would have pissed me off. It would have pissed me off if it had been a defensive situation. And then we would have had problems with it, even though, again, not the biggest deal in the world. But everyone has to learn that, how to take accountability when they know that they're wrong, and then ask for additional feedback. Like you've said, what can I do differently next time?
Yep.
I am so, so sorry. This will never happen again. These things go a long way, right? And then you don't have to,
They do.
because half of the problems with feedback is how you react to them,
Yeah.
right? You cause problems for yourself when you don't
Right.
handle it the right way. And we all have our strengths and weaknesses or challenges
Yeah.
when it comes to how we handle those things. But that's why I always ask for feedback. Especially when I knew that feedback would probably be coming, right? On a normal day, I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm good. You know, like, I just killed it all day long.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm like, I'm a little nervous. This feels a little off. Or I just gave a 30-minute presentation. I'm going to ask for feedback, because if I come out of here going, I killed it, and then someone comes at me with feedback, I'm going to be really sad, because I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I
Because
killed
I thought
it.
it was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm going to come at you with just very open to the possibility that it wasn't perfect. And that always, because I had my mindset right to receive at
Yeah.
that point, and it always made it easier for me. And I feel like when someone isn't worked up so much because it's been so long since that thing happened and they have to give you the feedback, then it's never going to come out as aggressively. Like, they're going to come at you with more compassion, because they're like, she really wants to know. So we're going
Yeah.
to tell her in a calm way,
Yep.
which is very appreciative by
You
me.
know, the biggest thing that a team leader can do for his or her team is build a culture of humility. And I can tell you what I did. I would have probably bi-weekly team, everybody on my team would come. And I would just start drilling into what our core values were. And then over time, what I would do is I would ask someone else, hey, tell me about the core value of, we watch what people do, not what they say. What does that mean to you? So over time, what would happen is by having different people on the team communicate those things, you never knew if I was going to call to do one. So
So you
people
better be ready.
They invested in it. And what it produced was, did we have the conflict moments that weren't fun? Of course we did, because we're people and we're different.
Humans.
But what it did do is it created a culture of humility. And that's kind of what you're talking about. Like, if I mess up, like, I remember one time we were going to do a retreat and I was like, well, I'll help with booking the hotels and doing this, that, and the other. We were going to a conference. Well, I booked it and accidentally did it as non-refundable. And then we decided that we were going to not go. And I had to go back to my leader and say, hey, I really messed up. Like, I didn't even realize this is non-refundable and da-da-da. And it's like, okay, well, what are you doing to fix it? And I was like, well, I set up a system to where my assistant will look at this before I give her all the information, because I told her to do that, right?
With a
I'll look at this.
checklist of things to look at.
Exactly, yes. And he was like, okay, great. And like, it was no big deal. But like, I owned it. I didn't try. It was humility. I was just like, listen, I messed up.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's even better whenever someone doesn't have to find out that they find out from you, and it can be hard.
Correct.
It can be hard to come to them with that. Mandy, remember missing flights and you're like, I just wasted $300 because I woke up late, and that makes me feel like a real asshole, and
Piece
there's
of
nothing
crap.
that
Yeah.
yes. And it's like we could sweep it under the rug and hope that the boss never noticed, because we had so many flights that
Yeah.
it's like you don't even know where all the flights are to.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I have to tell, because if they find out and now
it
it's
would eat at
after the
me. I had to
fact,
tell.
yes, yeah. Not everyone has that gnawing, like
Yeah.
voice in their brain, but oh
I
yeah,
have one statement for you.
yeah.
For feedback. Feedback and communication are the two most controllable things that you can do as a leader. It is a high impact habit that you as a leader can form. And what happens in that is that you build teams that, first of all, they collaborate and they work so well together because everyone's on the same page. The second piece of that is everyone feels comfortable going to each other, and the conflict kind of starts to be minimized. Is there going to be conflict still? Yes, but it starts to minimize a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I think feedback is just a tough thing for a lot of people. We could talk about feedback and communication of a team for days, because it's always
And
happening.
it's
It's always something to
multifaceted
work on.
too, right? Like there's so many different avenues about feedback and about communication on a team that, we talked about toxicity a couple of weeks ago. That's like the communication aspect is a massive part of that. There's so many different elements. We could keep going forever and ever. But at the end of the day, back to the root of who we are and what we do, like the burnout aspect of working in a corporate or large team otherwise setting, if you don't have the correct kind of feedback and the correct mindset in receiving feedback and knowing what to do with the feedback, like you can just ruminate on all of those things and all it does is perpetuate the burnout.
I will say this, your peers are not the people you should be talking to about it, because misery loves company.
We
We
learned that
failed.
lesson the
Yeah,
hard way. We failed
and
miserably
failed
at
at
that.
it.
Yep. And we learned the hard way. And we did have a wake up call where one day it was like, guys, we're the problem. Like
Yeah.
there was a
At least
problem,
part
but
of it.
now we
Yeah.
created this other bigger
Yeah.
thing that we're like, we have to cut this out.
Yeah. And that's
Yep.
why having that trusted person outside of your organization that knows you so well that you can, like, I even used to bounce things off my husband. Like I'd say, hey, so and so, he's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Or, yeah, I mean, I could see that, and knowing that he's for me and he wants the best for me. And so does my mentor, that I felt safe going to them. And then when they would give feedback, I'd say, okay, that makes sense. Like, okay, I'm going to follow up with my leader, but talking to your peers about that stuff, it just actually breeds discontentment in your culture. And it breeds conflict, and there's all kinds of nasty stuff that happens.
Yep. Like I said, there came a point where we had to like take full accountability for that.
Yeah, we're not making this better. We're actually making it worse, and we're making ourselves more unhappy when it's really not that bad, but we have turned this into a freaking hurricane of just just kind of a shitstorm. So
Yeah.
You know,
I,
when you do that, you slowly start to kind of, the way I explain it, you start to die on the inside because
Yes.
you're not showing up as your best self. You're
Uh-huh.
not showing up in your work as your best self. And so now you're not feeling like you're winning with your boss. You're not feeling like you're winning with your work. And there's this like pool of sludge that just constantly is around you, and you just slowly start to die on the inside, and it makes you unhealthy. And I'm not talking about physically, but mentally it starts to just drain you.
Uh-huh.
I agree.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about your book? Can you tell everyone about your book and what it's
Sure.
about?
My book is about your perspective. How are you seeing life? You know, we all wear different lenses at different times. So like your experience, your past experiences, your experiences in the moment, how you were brought up, your biases that you've gotten over the years, you know, how do you break free from those things? How do you clean your lenses every single day to go in and looking through a fresh pair of lenses for everything? How are you processing, you know, like I wrote it, the name came from my glasses. My glasses get smudged. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You see these things and your glasses get smudged. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know what that is. Like I clean my glasses so I can see that. And it's just being intentional about cleaning the lenses that you're looking through, right? Whether it's at work, whether it's at home. You know, I'm a huge proponent of like, if you're constantly saying something negative, your lens is probably dirty in that area. You need to probably take a step back and go, okay, is this me or is this really what's happening? Right?
Yeah. I love everything about that. I also want you to tell everybody about your podcast. I was a guest on last year and we were talking about marketing, but tell us what your podcast is about and who your audience is.
You know, I love interviewing people. I'm a very curious person, and I feel like I don't feel like I know that I can learn something from every conversation that I have with people. And so I started my podcast, and it's about interviewing entrepreneurs and leaders that are just doing things that I'm like, wow, they're awesome. I want to learn more about what they're doing. And my kind of tagline is bold moves, unfiltered success, and real stories. Because everybody, you can learn something from every single person's story and every single person's mistake.
Yeah.
We
Well,
agree.
I'm very excited about it. I literally am sitting here like, where can I find this book, Dirty Lenses? I found it on Amazon. I'll be reading soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have
Yes.
loved every second of this. What about socials? If people are interested to hear more and learn more about all the things that you do, you got some social handles you want to share with us?
It is the same across the board. LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Amy K Nunn, Nunn.
Amy K. Nunn.
And then, all right. And we'll
There
put
you
that in
have
That's
the
it.
show
simple.
notes and her website and, the link to the book and the link to the podcast. We will put it all in there for you. We're excited because we've always, with our podcast, we've always kind of made it a little bit random. We're like, we want to talk about toxicity now and we want to
Yeah.
talk about burnout and we want to talk about
Yeah.
feedback. But we started off last week talking about the personality tests, and then it led into the feedback. And now next week, we're going to reread the book, How to Say Anything to Anyone by Shari Harley, right? And
Yes.
I figure you like that book, huh, Amy? And so we're going to reread that because we have read it several times before in our
Yep.
career. And we're going to share some of our favorite takeaways from that because it really helped us while we were in corporate.
Very, very much.
To
With difficult conversations, if you have the magic
Yes.
formula, it ain't hard.
Yeah.
Another really great one is called Fierce Conversations. Susan Scott.
Okay.
Fierce Conversations. It's a great book.
All right.
Great book.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I wrote it down.
Yeah. No, it's very exciting because we know that humans are going to human, right? And if you can figure out how to say things in a way that is well received, it's always going to be smoother relationships and smoother team dynamics. And most people, I believe, want to do it right. They don't want to go in yelling and screaming and accusing. But sometimes it's like I've gotten myself so worked up, or I've been sitting on this for a little while because I didn't want to have the conversation, and now it's just going to blow out of me. And we just need the help, just little bits of help to be able to have
Imagine
these conversations.
Imagine if businesses would invest in their teams and help them develop these skills. What would the retention rates look like? I'm just
Well,
saying,
I
I
know.
can help you
Well,
with that.
yes, yes. And if you are a business who's like, we need to do this, we need to work on our
Yeah.
team, because
You
truthfully, it's
need
like,
Amy Nunn.
you do. You need Amy Nunn, and she can help you virtually, in person. Like, I think everyone should be in therapy. I think that everyone can benefit from working on themselves, right? And putting everything towards making themselves better. I
Yeah,
think that every team should have a coach,
I
because
agree.
there are not perfect teams. I have been on
Mhm.
amazing teams that I just loved with all my heart, but they were not perfect, because there's not a perfect
'Cause there's not
team.
one. Yeah.
And
Right.
there's not a perfect leader, and there's not a perfect dynamic, and there's not a perfect culture, and all of those things can be worked on. And Amy can help you. She's amazing. So we'll put all of that information, like I said, in the show notes so you can find her to hire
Can I
her.
just share one more thing?
Please.
All the biggest, the crux of most challenges in business and teams is not being curious and understanding someone else, because we're selfish innately. And so we want people to communicate in the way we want to communicate, not in the way that they need to be communicated to.
Yep.
Mhm.
And if you can understand yourself enough and then shift that to understand other people and the differences that are there, it's a game changer.
It is. That's the third time it's been
That's
said
the
on
third
this
time we've said
podcast.
it.
Yeah, that's a buzzword. I I completely agree with you.
I agree, and I have loved every second of this conversation.
Me too.
I'm deeply interested into just the human behaviors and how we tick and why we tick the way that we do, and then just the way that we interact together. And I think the deeper understanding that everyone has of themselves and the people around them, the more harmony we get to live in. And even though sometimes learning those things is a little exhausting, I feel like it pays off. And I
It's so worth
really
it.
appreciate the conversation today. And hopefully, our listeners were very engaged and understanding, and will dig a little bit deeper too. Um,
Yes.
I'm excited.
All right. Thank
Yeah,
you, Amy.
thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on. This was great. You guys are fun.
I
Ah,
love
thank
it.
you.
Have a
Thank you.
good
All
day,
right.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.